Welcome to Nursing Beyond the Bedside. I'm Audrey, your host, and a nurse who pivoted my path several years ago. After 8 years as a critical care nurse, I was ready for change. I craved higher pay and more flexibility, but was struggling to find a clear path forward. Fast forward through positions in recruiting, customer success, and marketing, and many lessons learned along the way. Today, I run Pivot Path, a company dedicated to empowering nurses to redefine their careers. This podcast is designed to help you navigate the journey from clinical bedside nursing to a fulfilling career that aligns with your passions and goals. Here, you'll discover inspiring stories from nurses who've gone beyond the bedside, successfully transitioning to non-clinical roles, or redefining their nursing career. Join us as we hear their stories and share actionable strategies to help you make your own leap. Whether you're a new listener curious about what lies beyond the bedside, or a returning audience member in need of some fresh motivation, this podcast is your go-to resource for exploring new opportunities that can transform your career. Let's get started. Today we're meeting with Eunice Hartsock. Eunice has over 13 years of experience in the medical field. She started her career as a bedside RN, gaining experience in both labor and delivery and outpatient PACU. She then became a nurse practitioner, primarily practicing as a neurology NP. She's since pivoted from direct patient care to working as a healthcare quality professional and is now exploring opportunities in the medical legal industry as an aspiring legal nurse consultant. Eunice, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Audrey. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to share your story. We can go ahead and just dive right in. I'd love to hear how you started your career and how you ended up pursuing nursing in the first place.
Sure. So my journey into the nursing world in general is, I guess, a little different than probably what you've heard from most people, right? I've heard, a lot of people say, oh, I went into nursing because of this really great experience that I had, taking care of a family member, or, any kind of really great experiences, or even, bad experiences related to that, kind of motivating them to become a nurse. My motivations were a little bit more practical, I guess you could say. My family and I immigrated to the United States from the Philippines about 20 years ago or so, 22 years now, I think. And at the time, being practical was really, really something that we had to do. And nursing was a really practical career. It's a very stable, you get a lot of job opportunities with it. So that's what we ended up doing. And I ended up choosing to go into nursing. And thankfully, I did enjoy it. So that was a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Nursing is very stable. And I think about that even as nurses look to a career transition. We have that safety net to fall back on. Like, we'll always be a nurse, and it is a career that we can always go and get a job doing if we need to. It's a level of security for us.
Absolutely. And nursing has so many options, right? There's so many things that you can do in the profession itself, or even outside of the profession, but still using your skills. So
I know. I love that about nursing because I was a pediatric nurse and had no interest in working with adults. And some people love adults and love geriatrics. And I think that it's really great that there is a place for everyone within the nursing profession.
I know, that's what I love about it. Anybody can basically be any kind of nurse that they want. And there's just, like I said, the options are just kind of limitless.
Totally. How did you find your way into labor and delivery?
That's actually such a funny story because before nursing school and even before my actual labor and delivery kind of theory and clinicals, I was actually deathly afraid of being around pregnant women and babies, which is, I know, just the most ironic thing ever. And it was, it was mostly just because I was so afraid because I didn't know what to do. I've never, at that time have never really been, around a lot of pregnant women or a lot of kids. a lot of my cousins were younger, but I just never really got to, you know, play around with them a lot or take care of them myself. So going into my labor and delivery theory and clinicals, I was actually quite shocked that I ended up loving it. I was terrified going into it, but after I saw my first delivery, and it was actually a preterm delivery, I was just hooked. I mean, hook,
Wow,
line, and
yeah.
sinker. I just thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I also ended up watching a C-section my first day at clinicals, and I was literally like leaning over trying to see what the surgeons were trying to do during the surgery. And a classmate of mine was literally trying to lean towards the wall, trying not to look. And I was all into it. So it was really funny that I ended up in L&D, knowing that history. And when I told my family actually that I was going into L&D, I think they literally thought I was having a stroke, because they're like, "Are you sure? What happened? Is everything okay?"
Well, sounds like you had a really big first day on clinical.
It was eventful. That is
Yeah.
definitely sure.
And so you did L&D. How long were you doing L&D before you switched to PACU?
So I did L&D full time nights for 3 years, and then I switched over to PACU after that. But I was able to kind of work L&D kind of per diem alongside when I was working in PACU. So a
Nice.
total, I would say, about 7.5 years of kind of in and out experience with L&D.
What was it that made you make the switch from L&D to PACU?
Um, it took me a really long time to really kind of um, I guess, make the decision to even go to PACU. And I think a lot of that stemmed from, I think, what a lot of nurses may or may not experience, but I know for me, it was a lot of the thought of feeling like I was failing. Like I was failing as a bedside nurse, as an inpatient acute care bedside nurse. And it took me a really long time to realize that it was okay to kind of make that decision to not be in that setting anymore. I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and I think the best way I was able to explain it, or even explain to myself, was imagine a place that's really beautiful, lots of flowers, lots of gardens. It's beautiful, people love those kinds of things. But if your body is allergic to certain factors of the plant, no matter how beautiful it is, you're going to suffer because you're suffering from allergies. So it's not that L&D was not beautiful, because I loved L&D. L&D still has a very, very, very special place in my heart. But for whatever reason, whatever components about working in an L&D setting, in an acute care setting, was just not aligning with myself anymore. And I knew it was time to go.
That's such a good analogy. As someone who has allergies, I totally got that.
Well, I'm an allergy sufferer, so that was the only way that I could even get myself to really make sense of that, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I mean, yeah, flowers are beautiful, but some aspects of the flower are painful for other people, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar experience when I worked critical care and going into the ICU and just carrying so much anxiety, or I don't even know that I would have pinpointed it actually as anxiety at the time because it was just what I did when I went to work every day. But I think that over time, that feeling of, oh, I'm actually carrying all of this stress because of the environment that I work in and how critical these patients are. And I'm pushing it down like it's no big deal every single day when I go to work. And I think over time it just caught up with me to where I was finally just feeling this like weight on my chest when I walked in every shift of like how immensely I could mess up with just one tiny little thing could have such an impact, and that really began to wear on me.
I relate with that so much. And I'm sure, you've seen people post videos about this all the time, kind of having that moment in the car, just kind of mentally preparing yourself to go to work while you're sitting in the car. And absolutely, I knew something had to change when that dread just wouldn't go away anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think it was a lot of, like you said, kind of repressing the thought. It's like, well, everybody works inpatient, everybody works bedside. I should be able to do this. Why wouldn't I be able to do that? I've trained just as long as other nurses have. I've graduated just like
Mm-hmm.
everybody else. Why am I feeling this way? And I think that's a big thing in a lot in that decision making of kind of making that leap finally to say, well, when is enough? When is it
Mm-hmm.
okay to go? So
Yeah, totally. And the amount of stress that we bear in our job every day is just so normalized. And I think it has to be to a certain extent because we have to go in and do what we do every day. But
absolutely.
yeah, it can totally catch up to you. How was your transition to PACU? Did you feel less stress, or it was just a different kind of environment and schedule that worked better for you? Like, what was it that made that feel different?
Well, one thing was it was a day shift position. And I never thought I would actually end up going on day shift because I loved night shifts so much. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that my body did not like night shift. I love night shift. I love the people.
Yeah.
I was adamant, and I think that was one of the reasons that was probably causing part of the stress was because I was so scared to leave night shift and go to day shift. But when I went to day shift, the transition, it really, for whatever reason, my body adjusted to it pretty well. Considering that I'm not very much a day person, it did work out for the better. In general, the stress was a little different. It definitely was still there because it's still direct patient care. It's outpatient, so it's a little different. It was definitely a different kind of stress.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely, I think with any kind of direct patient care job, you'll always kind of have the same things that you're always looking out for, right? Like, did I chart everything correctly? Did I give the right meds? Did I educate them? Um, with the signs and symptoms that they need to know about, all those aspects are still there, just in a different kind of severity, so to speak.
Yeah. And sometimes just a change of scenery is enough of a reset, at least just initially, to it just refreshes you some. It's a different stress and you just, you settle into that for a little while, rather than like the stress that you've known. And so when was it then following, or I guess maybe during while you were working outpatient PACU, when did you start thinking about what was next?
I had not planned on really going into higher education initially. A lot of people told me from the get go, and I think, this is kind of where that push is, right? Where a lot of people think that you go or you almost have to go get your advanced degree to kind of go anywhere beyond bedside. A lot of my professors told me almost immediately after I graduated, don't forget to come back, make sure you get your master's degree. And I was pretty much, no, I'm not ready. I've barely just graduated. I just want to focus on how to be a nurse, how to be a good nurse. It finally just got to the point where it felt like, what else could I do at that point? And again, a lot of the things and this really kind of ties into my journey, so to speak, with other roles that I've taken on. There was a lot of things about bedside that I struggled with, and primarily it was related to how could I make things better? How could I make things a bit more efficient? Not only for, obviously myself to make my flow a little bit better, because, they talk about making sure you have good time management as a bedside nurse, but obviously for the patients. So, if I do this faster, then I'll be able to get them out faster. If I write on this particular paper that it has all the information and that report goes to the nurse a lot quicker. There was just a lot of those things where I could see where some of those breakdowns were occurring, and I just didn't have either the resource or the type of person who could kind of help me figure out how to do that. So I thought, I thought that the only solution to kind of fix that was to pursue an advanced degree. And so I pretty much thought that obtaining my advanced degree was going to be the solution to those issues, because, you're in a different role. You're still a nurse, but it is very much seen as a provider, so it's a little different. So I figured, okay, this is how I was going to, I guess, fix those issues, so to speak.
And so, did you find that once you became a nurse practitioner, you had more influence to impact change, or no?
That's a good question. I think it depends. I think there is definitely some influence, because I think a lot of times, and it's very odd being an NP, or when I was practicing as an NP, because people will say, well, you're a provider, you can tell them, you can do this, you can do, and it's very odd, having the ability almost to actually say, hey, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that. And so that was quite odd. And funnily enough, in the NP role that I did have in the neurology clinic that I worked at, I was able to kind of bring about kind of processes that did help my flow and also helped the patient. So I was under the impression at the time that it was because I was the provider, not really realizing until now that it was probably what would have been the catalyst to me going to become a healthcare quality professional.
Do you have an example of some of the things that you mentioned, like something that would be an improved process for you, but also benefited patients? What were some of those?
Absolutely. I can actually give you the exact example that I ended up using during my interview, because when I started researching about quality roles, I'm like, oh, that's what it was, but I didn't know at the time. So one of the things that we did at that particular clinic was to provide infusions for patients with MS. So they would get IV infusions of their medications either every month, every 6 months, every 3 months, depending on the medication. And one of the things that I did was to actually start the IV and start the infusion, and excuse me, and monitor them kind of throughout the day depending on how long the infusion was. One of the issues that we were having was I was having difficulty starting the IVs, and because of that, it delayed my flow with seeing other patients in the clinic. Not only that, I'm having to poke these patients multiple times, which is already a very stressful thing for having to get infusions in the clinic. And what was weird about it was the IV system, or the IV start system that they used, was the exact same ones that I've used my entire career. So I couldn't understand why I was having an issue. And it hadn't even been that long since I've been off the floor. I was like, there's no way that I'm missing this many with a system that I'm familiar with. I said, something else is happening. Well, I realized that a lot of MS patients are very dehydrated when they come to the clinic, partially because they already have difficulty controlling their bladder. So when you're having to sit for an infusion for 3, 4, 6 hours, even almost an entire day, a lot of them don't want to drink water before they come in because they don't want to have to go to the bathroom, which I understand completely, because the more you stop the infusion, the longer the infusion is going to take. So once I realized that, I basically just started troubleshooting. I said, okay, so if they're having issues with being dehydrated, one of the solutions we thought was, well, remind them, make sure that the office calls these patients before their appointment to make sure they drink water. Again, theoretically a good idea, but then that was the whole point. They didn't want to drink the water because of the because of having to go back to the bathroom so much. So one of the solutions that ended up working really well was we had a warmer that we could put on the patient's arms. So typically they have to get medicated with Benadryl and Tylenol before the procedure. So I said, while we're waiting for that to kick in, as soon as you give them the meds, put the warmer on their hands. So while they're waiting for me before I start their IV, their hands are already warmed up. And that was the big thing. After we did that, my miss rate almost became non-existent because of that.
Amazing. I'm picturing that in like you and your quality role. And that is such a, okay, here's a problem. What are the possible causes of this problem? How can we find solutions? And like landing on one that works for everyone. It works for the patient. They're not having to drink a ton before they come in. It works for you. You get your IV. You're not delayed. The patient's not getting stuck multiple times. So that's amazing. And I can see how that would translate into a quality role really well.
Absolutely.
And so how did you get to quality then? Like if you were in NP, you were doing these amazing things on the unit, like what was the next transition?
So I think, and again, I wasn't looking for quality. A lot of times, most of my roles, I really wasn't looking for it. I think life was just pushing me towards these roles. I wasn't looking for it. And at the time, I had mentioned, the things that I was having issues with in the bedside, not being able to kind of have that influence with processes and things like that. It still also applied, even though I had that really wonderful opportunity to be able to fix that particular process. Excuse me. There were things about the NP role that still had the same kind of issues that I was having on the bedside. And it finally kind of dawned onto me where I was actually kind of on the fence. I'm like, well, where do I go from here? I've already obtained my advanced degree. I've already done all that, and I'm already here. Again, you're kind of having that kind of crisis where you're like, well, what do I
What's
do?
next? Yeah.
What's next? Like again, that thought of, well, apparently I failed as a bedside nurse. I'm barely going to fail as an NP too. But, a friend of mine had reached out to me, and it just so happened to be literally right around the time that I was just kind of contemplating, where I'm like, is this a good fit for me? Is being an NP, is providing patient care, is that all I can do? Did I need to go to a different kind of specialty? Did I need to go to a different route of patient care? I just really didn't know at that point anymore. And it was definitely a terrifying feeling. But she had reached out to me because she was telling me about a director friend of hers who happened to be looking for an NP for a quality role. And it specifically had to be an NP because of the educational requirements that the role needed at the time. Um, so she told me that it was somebody who had to be an NP, who liked data, who liked research, who liked processes. And it kind of got me thinking, I'm like, is that where I need to be? And again, at that time I said, no, I told myself, no, that can't be it. That can't be it. Because that's not bedside, or that's not direct patient care. And all I've ever known, all I've ever been taught was you become a bedside nurse, you do that for, a while, and then you get your advanced degree, then you become an NP, then you might even become, a teacher, an educator around that time. So I really wasn't planning to do that. And again, like I said, life likes to push, and certain things kind of happened, kind of really reiterating the thought where, okay, maybe I should at least have the conversation and explore it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had the phone conversation with the director, who ended up becoming my boss later on, I was just telling her about the things that I, struggled with, or the things that I saw as a bedside nurse or as an NP, particularly regarding around processes, and how at a higher level, it affects more than just the one patient. It really can affect everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
because a good process can help the nurse help patients. And come to find out, she apparently wanted to hire me. I didn't realize it was an interview. I thought I was just having a conversation with her, but they said, please come interview, and I did, and the rest was history.
The best opportunities just kind of land at your doorstep.
Yes, I had no idea. My friend just said, just have a chat with her, just have a conversation. I said, sure, I don't mind a conversation. Yes, I did not realize it was an unofficial phone interview.
How much did you know about what working in quality meant before you were in quality?
Practically non-existent.
Okay.
It was practically, I literally had no idea what being a quality professional, healthcare professional meant. I'd never even really truly heard of roles that existed like that. I knew that they did because, they talk about, quality this, quality that. I'm sure you've heard it in the hospital, here's a core measure, here's a quality program, here's this and that. So somebody knew about it. I just didn't know what that actually entailed. And actually, when I applied for the position officially, I actually almost backed out, because when I read the job description, yes, I had the education requirements, because I had to have had, I think they said, 3 years of acute care experience, which I did. I had to be an NP, but then there were other things that I needed to meet, so to speak, which I definitely knew that I did not, in terms of the things that they wanted out of this quality professional. I literally told my friend, I said, I can't apply for this position because I don't qualify. She's like, no, they're telling you to apply. I said, okay, I feel like I'm putting an application that's not accurate, but I said, okay, I will be as honest as I possibly can. I will say I don't have this, and this, going into the interview. And they knew that. They needed the main requirements, but what they were looking for was something else, which is everything that my director and I at the time, now, or at the time, talked about. That's what they were looking for. I said, okay.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about here. So the first one being, how would you just describe working in quality to a nurse at the bedside who is in your shoes that you were at the time and you had no idea what that really meant? Like, what would you describe that role as?
Quality is so broad, but I will at least kind of describe it the way that I've lived quality for such a long time. Quality for me, especially for that role, was basically looking at data and processes and how we could analyze that to help improve patient outcomes.
Okay. That makes sense to me. What was the actual title that you took with that first quality role?
My first quality role, my first title was a quality management analyst.
Gotcha. Okay. That I ask that because I don't think many nurses are searching for that job title.
It's not. I've never even heard of a quality management analyst until I saw the job position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so it's so cool that you found this position where, all of this that you had been realizing about yourself and what you wanted in your nursing career, like you were seeing these issues, you wanted to improve them, you wanted to change things to make things better. And then here's this role that is exactly that. Look at this data, look at these outcomes, tell us how we can be more efficient, be safer, fix these things, and then, get to also look at the results, which is, I'm sure, really rewarding to be able to see the outcomes that have happened from these quality improvements.
Absolutely. I think that's what really made me feel like I've really found kind of my niche in that role, or even just in quality in general. Because I think, like I said, being able to kind of see it from that higher level, because you in quality you have the ability to see all aspects of the hospital, not just your one unit, but how this unit interacts with this one, and what kind of gaps in those processes delay that. A good example would be, for stroke alerts, right? When a patient comes in, they have to get to CT quickly. What are the things that could potentially prevent a patient from getting from the door to, to needle or whatever that may be? So those are some of the things that you look at. You're also looking at um, uh, things like sepsis. I had a lot of involvement with sepsis in my previous quality roles. I did a lot of abstraction for it, and I've never really dealt with sepsis before because I was an L&D and outpatient PACU units that never really had to deal with sepsis. So it was a lot to learn sepsis from kind of a quality standpoint. But it's actually amazing, that you get to kind of learn and see what nurses, what providers do, and how, again, you're able to use that data to kind of help them say, hey, if we do this quicker, hopefully it will produce a better outcome. Or, hey, could you document this a little better? Because then with better documentation, then we're more compliant with the chart and things like that.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to kind of circle back on is the job requirements and how you felt like
Yes.
you didn't really fit the requirements for this job. And I think that that's important for us to kind of like double click on, because I think a lot of times we as nurses and as women, like, we don't apply to jobs where we feel like we don't fit all of these boxes. And what I try to coach nurses on all the time is you don't actually have to fit every single checkbox. It's kind of like their wish list of like the perfect employee. However, you can be someone who comes in and provides value in ways that they like maybe didn't even expect when they were thinking about someone to fill this role. And so I think generally, if you feel like you can provide the value that they're looking for in the job, and if you meet, I don't know, roughly 70% of of what they're looking for, I think it's still worth an application. And especially, and your story is a testament to this too, but especially if you can have some sort of personal connection to someone who is looking to hire for that position. I think that networking, just as a way to get your foot in the door and have that initial conversation with someone, is so important.
I mean, ding, 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 110,000 million percent. I know that's not, like mathematically a correct number, but yes, I mean, you hit all the points. Those are all true. Those are all 100% true. So I'll touch on, the different things that you mentioned. The networking portion, as much as that can be daunting, it really is, it can be really crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, is it enough? Not always, right? Because sometimes it's just a foot in the door to have the conversation to see if you are going to be the best fit for that position. But it's possible you might not have had the opportunity to even have your seat at the table
Mm-hmm.
if you didn't have the opportunity to talk to other people who could get you there. You know what I
Right.
mean? And kind of touching on touching on the requirements, or the job requirements. Absolutely. I did not realize, and I did not realize this until I actually became somebody in a management position, because eventually I did end up becoming the manager of the department that I started in. And that's also another role kind of pushed into my life that I wasn't expecting. But it was such a great learning experience, kind of seeing leadership, and being in a kind of leadership position to kind of also see it from that level. I think having kind of that well-rounded kind of experience in terms of seeing it from different perspectives kind of really gives you the opportunity to see how everything works and understand where people are coming from, right? I've been the bedside nurse, I've been the provider, and I've been the person behind the scenes. So I've seen every aspect of patient care pretty much, and have some understanding of how all that kind of comes together. So in a management role, I really realized that now I understood why my director said, please just apply. Because, yes, I met the minimum requirements in terms of education, because there are things that definitely have to be met, at minimum. Like if they said you have to have an RN license, you have to have an RN license
Yeah.
to be able to apply and things like that. But other things that, they'll say like 3 years of experience in quality, doing this XYZ, this type of review. I know for a fact that I had never done that. And like I said, I almost didn't apply because of it. But now, having the experience that I did as a manager, really what a lot of leaders are looking for is the right person, the right person with the right skills, with the right personality that is going to do well in that role. And I really realized how important temperament was in these types of positions, because it's easier to work with somebody who might not have all the skills or ticks all the boxes, because that's teachable.
Right.
You can teach a lot of these hardcore skills, but these soft skills, learning how to be a team player, it's not as easy as people think. Being able to actually analyze data, being able to actually critically think through that, being able to discern data in a certain way, you really won't be able to teach those things. The person either has it or they don't.
Exactly. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Those soft skills are really the essential skills. You need the underlying soft skills, and then the hard skills can be taught. If you need to use a certain software, a tool, those things can all be taught. So yeah, you mentioned like doing a certain type of analysis. Like I'm sure that that's something that can be trained, but the underlying like critical thinking skills can't be trained, or at least not as
Correct.
easily. So,
Yes, yes.
so yeah, and I love hearing it from, your perspective, both as an applicant and then later on the hiring side as well. You've come full circle.
Yeah, never in my wildest dreams would I ever thought that would happen.
um, and so, looking ahead, where do you see your career going from here?
Well, I really enjoy quality. I've told people all the time that quality is my niche, however you want to pronounce it. I foresee myself hopefully doing that for a long time, but um, I think like a lot of nurses, we're always interested in other things. We're always learning or wanting to learn other kinds of fields. So I've actually been looking into something called being a legal nurse consultant. And it's combining basically kind of the medical and the legal field together. After learning more about the position or what the role kind of entails, it's already has a lot of things that I currently do. Again, kind of pointing out to what you said, the skills that you learn in every position, starting from a bedside RN to whatever you become, there are certain things that you are already doing that is applicable in other types of jobs and
Totally.
positions. So, looking into that, I said, well, that seems neat. That seems fun. That's different. It's the same, but different. I've never had to apply any of my skills specifically kind of in a truly, purely legal aspect. So I'm really excited to kind of explore that more and see where that will unfold.
Is there a program or any like special education that's required to pursue that path, or is it more of just like job searching and networking?
So I'm still in the very, very early stages, so I certainly would not be, as knowledgeable as other LNCs. But from the mentors that I've reached out to, from different people that I've kind of, researched online, really it does not take a lot to start, in a sense that there are programs out there that you can take, and really a lot of these programs are primarily focusing on really integrating the legal portion, because you already can technically be an LNC by just being a nurse. There's very minimum requirements to becoming an LNC, and really there a lot of these attorneys or lawyers or even other LNCs just want to make sure that you're taking the initiative to kind of understand the legal aspect of everything, because it's a new ball game. It's a whole new ball game. And so from that, really, the preparation for that should not be too heavy. There's definitely various types of programs. It really just depends on what you end up with. But like you mentioned, it is very much kind of a networking based type of world, to really be able to kind of get jobs. And it's very reputation based as well. So if you do good work, if you have a good work product, you produce good things, your name will get passed around, and people will, reach out to you and say, hey, I have, this type of case, or I need you to help me with this, and so on and so forth.
That's exciting. A new chapter to explore.
Right.
We'll have to have you on the podcast again once you're, a year or a few months into the LNC world, and you can tell us all about that.
I would love to. I'm definitely learning more about it right now. I'm actually in my program right now. I'm about halfway done. But I've already actually started just kind of networking with people out there, just having conversations, truly. Like, marketing is a whole nother thing that I'm getting used to as well. So that's another skill I'm having to learn myself. But I'm really just trying to make connections with people in the field, just kind of getting their insight, right? Getting to hear their experiences and learning from those. So really, it's just like you said, it's a whole new chapter, a new beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like in a few parts of this conversation, we've talked about the importance of networking and how, just connecting with people can be so valuable. So I worked with a professional coach for a little while as I was kind of working through my career transition, and he encouraged me to just set up a series of informational interviews. And by that, he meant choose anyone who does anything and have a conversation with them, learn about their job, what they do, share your story, all of that. And I was so hesitant to do that because I was like, why would someone who I'm just like reaching out to on LinkedIn take time out of their day to have a call with me? And I was shocked with the number of people who I got a really positive response from, and people who were willing to take time out of their day and just have a conversation with me. And what I think we don't realize as nurses, because that is not something that we need to do to get clinical bedside nursing jobs, is that that's just how the rest of the business world operates. And so when you reach out to someone and you're asking for this, people understand like, oh, this is a networking call. We're just going to chat. We're going to share, what I do professionally, what she does professionally. And we'll see if there's any, synergistic opportunities here. If not, great. We've met someone else. We have a connection in our back pocket who, could be someone else great to tap on down the road. So I would say that that's one really great thing that nurses who are at the bedside today and are thinking about another career path, I mean, that's something they can start doing and taking action on immediately. You don't have to be even actively pursuing other jobs to start networking. Just browse LinkedIn. If someone has a job title that looks interesting to you, reach out, So networking is huge. If you look back on your career path, from that bedside nurse who was, working L&D and PACU and kind of wondering what's next to where you are today and through the multiple transitions. Is there any advice that you would give yourself at the time, looking ahead?
I would have told myself to really tap into kind of your core values. And I think the reason for that is because that truly kind of dictated a lot of what I felt was the best type of job for me. And really that took me a long time to um that took me a really long time to kind of develop. And I wish I had developed that a little sooner. I know people talk about it all the time, what are your core values? What are your core principles? Um, I think a lot of us have that, but really kind of honing that in and understanding the things that you find, passionate about. Like, what are the type of things that you care about most? Yes, of course, patients matter, but there's so many different ways that you can care for a patient, and that includes a non-bedside job.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because actually, as I've been talking to a lot of nurses who have transitioned away from the bedside into other roles to have on this podcast, so many of them actually come back to that and just identifying your core values. And it is a step because I think a lot of people skip that because it requires you to pause and
And reflect.
exactly it makes you pause for some self-discovery. And we're nurses, we're action oriented, we're always looking at like, okay, so what can I do next? And sometimes it feels like pausing is not the right thing to do. But when you really take that time to figure out like what's important to me, both professionally and personally, honestly, it can make that path forward feel so much more clear and you can have confidence in the next path that you head down.
Absolutely. I cannot wholeheartedly agree more. And I wish that was something that I knew going into it. Or even like, halfway through my nursing career. I really didn't do that type of reflection until really it was too late. And I think that made so much sense in terms of why I was struggling with some of the positions that I was in. Not necessarily because they were bad positions, but they just didn't align with what was important to me. And every time I reflect, every time I look back, and every position is a lesson, to be garnered from. But every time I look back at positions that, where I didn't feel like I did the best that I could, or if it wasn't a good fit for me for whatever reason, a lot of times, 99.9%, it was because it didn't align with the things that really were part of my core values. And so since then, since I've really kind of made that realization, um, every position or any position that I've kind of, pursued, and again, life mostly pushing towards me, but I've really had to kind of reflect and say, okay, is that something that aligns with everything that I want, everything that is important to me?
Mm-hmm.
And if it does, everything else really doesn't matter. And I think, especially in nursing, and certainly there's nothing wrong with this because, money is one of those big influences in the nursing world, because you do make good money as a nurse. I think that's just a fair statement. But a lot of times, if that becomes kind of the primary thing, where that is what you're looking for, and I know for me that did not end well. It had to be, did it align with everything else? Because it becomes it's a bonus, right? That becomes more an added bonus instead of being the only thing that was good
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Definitely. And I feel like as nurses, so many of us are in it because we care or we're passionate about something. And I think that a lot of us need that fulfillment in our work. That fulfillment doesn't have to come from hands-on patient care, as you and I have both mentioned in this conversation. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can get that fulfillment, but yeah, there's definitely obviously going to be different factors that weigh into every decision for everyone, but it's one of those times that it's good to just get out a good old-fashioned pen and paper, write down what really matters to
Pros and
you.
cons.
Yep. Exactly. And keep coming back to what you value, and that may shift over time with how your life and
Absolutely.
family and things change, so those priorities
Absolutely.
might need to shift as well. But it's important to slow down enough to get a good look at yourself and kind of what you're after.
Absolutely. It's a terrifying process. It's something that a lot of us don't want to do, but it is, like you said, so crucial because I think it will guide you in, kind of in the best way possible. It really kind of aligns with a lot of things, and the jobs will align a lot more, with what you want to do.
Absolutely. Well, Eunice, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me today. We have had such a good conversation, and I feel like covered a lot of really important things that need to be discussed for nurses who are thinking about what else they can do with their nursing career.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was really fun just kind of chatting about this, and just kind of being able to just kind of share at least my experience. I know it's not the end all be all of experiences, but if anybody's able to kind of maybe spark a conversation because of that, and maybe be the catalyst in terms of like, well, maybe I can go and do something else outside of bedside, then and that's all I can
Absolutely.
ask for.
Yeah, that's what this podcast is all about. Eunice, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been so awesome sharing your story. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to connect with Eunice, I'll drop her LinkedIn in the show notes and you can connect with her there. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. And if you were inspired by today's conversation, I hope you'll share this episode with someone who'd love it just as much as you did. If you're ready to pivot your path, visit the job board at jobs.mypivotpath.com. And if you have any questions or just want to say hi, feel free to email me at audrey@mypivotpath.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.